And as many of you know, every month I bring you a message from Mother Mary from the quiet of that realm to bring us some peace and joy and understanding. And this month, her topic that she wanted us to talk about is how do we go from a reckoning to a renaissance? And as anyone who has been alive and looking at any part of the news, I think you can see that we are in a reckoning. Now, what is a reckoning? As an ex-English teacher, I have to look these things up. And a reckoning is an accounting. And there's even a biblical reference to the day of reckoning, which is supposedly once you pass over to the other side, you are basically asked to explain or defend the actions or inactions of your life. But we're not going to go there yet. We're going to talk about the reckoning of what's happening in the US, but really all over the world right now, where there are people that are incredibly unhappy about what's going on. And there's certainly, at least that I can see, there's no clear vision or clear voice of someone saying, oh, here's what's going on, here's what you need to do. So when that happens, I always try to consult with Mother Mary, and I'll be bringing her in just a moment. But I'll also ask, what is a renaissance, right? So we can go back to the time when Michelangelo and, and Da Vinci and all of those guys seemingly sprang from the ethers. And they came out of the Middle Ages, which was a time of incredible repression and darkness in so many ways. And so are we headed that way? We're in this reckoning of looking at the actions and inactions of each of us, as long with, the government and societies, all over the world. But out of that mess, can we really create a renaissance? And so I'm really excited to hear what Mother Mary is going to share with us about that, and also how each of us can, in our own way, do any reckoning that we need to do for our own actions or inactions in life, but also for the renaissance that we'd like to have. And I think that the powerful lens of history shows us that even in the darkest times, there are those who are carrying the light and that help to bring people together in a new way. It doesn't often happen overnight, but it does truly happen. So I'm all about, let's see how we can go from this reckoning of what happened and what didn't happen and who did what and all of that, but not so much pointing the fingers of blame, oh, it's this one or it's that one, but understanding the deeper forces of what led to these uprisings, not only here in the US, but really happening all over the world. And if we can create a renaissance. So thank you so much for joining with me, whether you're here tonight or you're joining and listening at another point in time. My name is Samara Grace Daniels. I've been channeling Mother Mary since 1997. And I have to say, it has been the joy and honor of my life. And it's been my reckoning and my renaissance in those years, from being a hardworking realtor to being a messenger of love. And I'm happy about the renaissance part. So without further ado, let me bring in Mother Mary and see if she can lift us into that place. Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming. What I want to say first and foremost is if you're listening to this and watching this, you're already ahead of the game. Because what you're already doing is looking at how did this happen, what is my part in it, and what can I do about it? And so you're not one of the ones running around shooting guns or blaming people, or even those who are like Henny Penny saying the sky is falling. What's happening is a reckoning. And it has to do really with the foundation of your society, which has been promulgated with ideals and ideas of justice and fairness and equality, while all the while, again, suppressing the justice and the fairness and the equality of some people. And so you cannot have peace and injustice coexist for very long. You can't. And so it's understanding this principle that if you want peace in the world, if you want fair play, if you want equality, if you want prosperity, if you want all the good things, you have to take a look at how to create justice. And justice is not easily created because who's deciding what's just? Who's making the laws and the rules? Here in the US, in the original Constitution, it was written and made by basically rich, basically white men. Women couldn't vote. People of color couldn't vote. But nonetheless, they began to realize they didn't want the tyranny of the king. They wanted to be their own society, their own country, their own republic. Now, why? I know you're all like, well, what does that have to do with now and this and that? But it does, because the Constitution of the US is really like a very loosely held vision and agreement that was designed to move toward a more perfect union. Still got a long way to go. And in that process, over these 200 or so years of the US at any rate, what has been happening is that more and more people are saying, wait a minute, I'm not feeling like I'm being treated with equality. So I'm not going to be peaceful. I'm not going to just sit around and let you subjugate me. I'm not going to do that. And so all over the US and of course all over the world, you have seen these uprisings, demonstrations of various kinds, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the point? What's the point of all of it? It's really now to sit back down and do your own reckoning of how to create a fair and just, prosperous and loving life for yourself, for your friends, for your family, but more importantly for society. And as you've seen in politics, what has been happening is that there's very little agreement. There's very little agreement about how to do that. So let me back up for just a moment. We're in this time of really reckoning with all the decisions that have been made up until now throughout the world. So you can jump over to China for just a moment and recognize in that sort of society, the ability to control and to keep secrets overrides much of the freedom of people. But then again, they have safety. Not really, not really. So the reckoning is looking at the disparity between what a society says it's about and what it delivers. And so what has all that got to do with you and with consciousness and with the evolution of the planet? It really has a lot to do with it, because now it's time to look at what would a Renaissance be like. And we're not going to say, oh, well, Joe Biden's elected, so it's all going to be just wonderful. No, he's coming into something that is still an incredible mixture and sort of chaotic mess of different ideas and different thoughts. And so if you're going to be a society of the people, by the people, for the people, then every single one of you and every person who has the consciousness to look at it has to begin to participate. And so all of the rules and regulations and various components, both of democracy and autocracy and all the various governments, are going to be examined in the coming days. And that won't be always quiet and lovely, as you just saw. And so it's really to understand we're at a place again of perhaps taking an evolutionary leap to really take what those first beginning founders wrote toward a more perfect union and really reimagine what that would be like. What would that involve? And what would be your part in it? Because that's really sort of the juicy part, that all of you can have a part in sending out information and ideas and feelings and preferences about what you'd like to see. Now, in a society here in the US of 300 and some million people, that's a lot of ideas. But it's part of no longer waiting for someone else to tell you how your life's going to be. And that's the exciting part. It's taking that liberty and that freedom and putting consciousness into that equation. What happened on Wednesday was a bursting forth of the desire for freedom, even though the disparity was enormous. That wasn't freedom, but that's what they believed. And so in this process, and it's going to take about a decade, so fasten your seatbelts and get ready. It's going to take about a decade to really hone in on what is a more perfect union. And some of the components are quite beautiful in a way. The highest ideals that you have for peace and justice, you can communicate to your friends, to your neighbors, to whoever, not as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a Jew or a Christian or whatever. No, but as a human being. So it's about coming back into the place of your own, I'll call it spiritual sovereignty, which is the light that you came in with, that will never leave you. So you don't identify your conversation as a this or a that. You identify it as a sovereign soul who wants the well-being of everyone on the planet. So it's a vision, much like Leonardo da Vinci's beautiful man that he drew, which was confusing to people, or Michelangelo's statues, where he said, no, I didn't carve a statue. I just took away what didn't belong. So it's time to see yourselves really as the artists and the writers and the sculptors of a new society, one that is based in a consciousness of love and peace and harmony. Can you do it overnight? No. Can you do it alone? No. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't start and you shouldn't try and you shouldn't do whatever is your part to do. But it really begins with understanding that you have a role to play in this new emerging creative renaissance of humanity. Because we've had all the times of division. Okay, I'm a Catholic, so I do this, and you're a Jew, so you do that, and you're a Republican, so you do that, and all of those divisions that created compartments of judgment and hate. And those compartments of judgment and hate are what you were seeing on Wednesday in that terrible, terrible conflagration and confrontation. So, hello, Elaine. Sorry, we were busy, couldn't call you back. So at any rate, what we're talking about, though, is realizing that if you show up as a sovereign soul first, yes, you could be a woman or a man or a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, but that's not how you show up. You show up as your sovereign light. And you create and hold a vision of a world where there's a seat at the table for everyone who's willing to be respectful at that table. And if they're not willing to be respectful, then they can just kind of wait. And then when they are, they can come in and have a seat at the table. But just as those of you that are parents, if you had a 4-year-old throwing a fit, you wouldn't say, oh, that's all right, let him just throw a fit. You would say, you know, go to your room, and when you can behave, come on out. So as a sovereign soul, I want to give you a little flashback. Samara and I have been partners now for more than 20 years, and it's been lovely for both of us. But one of the things that she brought through our request was a new form of Reiki called Mana Reiki that then sort of morphed into White Star Reiki. But I want to go back for just a moment to 2010 when we brought forth that request to her to do Mana Reiki, M-A-N-N-A Reiki. And she was confused because she said, well, I'm already, you know, a regular Usui Reiki master, trained in a very traditional way. Why would you want me to do this? And we explained that there was an evolution in the light body of humanity in which it's no longer enough to sort of carry around knowledge that you don't then incorporate into your physical light body and your human body. And so we named it Mana Reiki simply because that has really two reference points. In biblical times, as the Jews were fleeing, if you look at your Bible in Exodus, the story goes that God rained down bread from the sky that they could gather and eat. But if they tried to take too much, they tried to take some for the next day, it rotted. So they were shown that God would provide their daily bread. And so it was to alleviate all of the fear, but also all of the greed of the society that they had left. So just think about that for a second. The other interesting use of the word mana, you will often find in Hawaiian and Polynesian cultures. And they believe that mana is life force. It's your energy, it's your ka, it's your connection to source, it's your life force energy, source energy. And you can grow that and you can diminish that through the actions that you take or the inactions. And so we wanted to blend both of these beautiful resonant ideas into this new form of Reiki so that it would challenge people to realize I don't have to hoard more than my share. I will be cared for. And I have a responsibility to my mana, my life force, my ka, my chi, to keep it resonant, keep it radiant, and keep it expressive. Otherwise, it will diminish. And so, not that you all have to take Mana Reiki or White Star Reiki, but it's lovely if you do, because what it does is it's designed to take you through looking at and reckoning with the stories you've told yourself that hold you back. And then hopefully making the decision, okay, that isn't what I choose to live and believe any longer. And also to walk without fear, knowing that if you're living your light, mana will come, mana will be provided, you will be fine. So I tell you all of that because this reckoning to Renaissance requires your mana. It requires that you take care of your internal connection to source and expand upon it through generosity, through kindness, through taking care of yourself in all the various ways that all of you know. And then here's the next part. It requires that you look out and reach out, and to the best of your ability, with those who you resonate with, offering something to them of your mana. Smile, kindness, writing, it doesn't matter. Because in the world that is to come, it's a world in which everyone is part of the same human family. Now, why is that important? I know this is like a long history lesson tonight, but I think you'll see where we're going with this. If you think about COVID, it's transmitted by breath. So if you're in your mana and you're breathing out love, respect, peace, harmony, justice, that's a gift to the world. And it also hopefully will mean that over time, more and more people will be breathing that in, and therefore then breathing out to you that which is also benevolent. And so I'm just really inviting you to see all of these sort of waves that are happening at once. And so your responsibility, to just come back to that for just a moment, is to keep your mana beautiful, full, bright, and to share it generously as you are guided, but always making sure, first of all, to, as they say, put your oxygen mask on first. So I spoke about 10 years, and I want to give you just sort of a vision. Many people all over the world have looked to government for solutions. And as you're seeing right now, the demand and the supply do not match. The demands of what you would like to see your governments doing and what they have, both in intelligence and in resources and in vision and capacity, does not match the needs of the people. It's that simple. So it's going to fall on, just as here in the US with COVID, it was like, oh no, it's all falling to the states, work it out. And then each of the communities had to figure out what they were doing and they didn't know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always now going to come back to you. Individual, personal responsibility. And out of that, what do I mean? Oh my goodness, am I, what am I talking about? But it's for you to now communicate to those that you have elected what you need, what you can offer in the way of ideas or visions or possibilities, and to keep that channel of communication open while also looking around your community and giving mana and help to those that are already in the trenches. And you have legions and legions of beautiful, loving souls doing everything from hospice care to walking animals to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're already doing an amazing, amazing work, but they need some help too. So it's going to be like a spider weaving a web, and it's going to take a while. But as you reach out to the next one and just offer some kindness or a check or whatever that happens to be, they are lifted and they can then do the same as it goes on. You talk about pay it forward, but it's even more delicious than that. It's this process of creating a web of light. A web of light where, as I said, there's room at the table for everyone. And all of you have already so much mana, so much light, so much heart. But what's happened up until now is sort of a confusion about, well, what's mine to do? What's mine to do? What's mine to do? Pick something. It doesn't really matter anymore. Just pick something and say, all right, let me start with that. Let me start with that. If you can donate blood, go donate blood. That's something. If you can go and volunteer a few hours at the women's shelter, go and do that. If you can sew masks, go and do that. But don't stop yourself because you're waiting for some invitation from heaven to say, do this. Just do what you can, knowing that if you're doing it from that beautiful sovereign place in your heart, what you're sharing is love. But remember what I said, it's from that sovereign place, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as a Christian, not as a Jew, as a human being sharing your love and your light into the world. And I'll be back every month to give you the next view. January is going to be, as you've already seen, a little bit of bump. But that's also because the people that believed what their leader was saying wanted to support him. That in and of itself is not a bad thing. So if you can share a vision of support for something that is much more productive, that would be lovely. So I want you to all stay in your hearts, in your larger wisdom mind, and then do what you can wherever you live to share your love. And I know that it might feel a bit bumpy and overwhelming, but every time you just reach out, pick up the phone or send an email or whatever is in your purview to do, you align yourself. Align, A-L-I-G-N. You align yourself with your sovereign soul of love. And so it keeps increasing your mana. And that's what will keep you healthy, happy, joyous, and part of this renaissance that we're building together. So I wish you all much, much love. I'll stay on the call for those who are still here. Be well, be brave, be you. Namaste.